Newcastle 1, Barcelona 2, and there you have it. Rashford with two absolutely sensational goals, and you've just got to applaud it, essentially, from my case. As a Real Madrid fan, do you know what? Supporting Newcastle all today throughout that hate along, that hate watch, whatever you want to call it, and it wasn't a successful one. A very unsuccessful hate watch from my standpoint. But do you know what? Barcelona, they go away to St. James's Park, and you just got to reflect on it and sometimes be honest on this one and say they performed not even at 60% of their level today. They didn't. And they were without Yamal, without Balde. And you saw the midfield. They were passing, they were moving, they were trying to orchestrate something. And at the end, in terms of the first goal, it was a Koundé cross into Rashford. Rashford with a sublime header past Nick Pope. And then the second goal, Rashford with an absolute zinger of a shot. And I'm not making an apology video at all, because my thing still stands. You're going to see Rashford consistently throughout the season, and Barcelona fans still going to see Rashford consistently to see what he does. But today, he was definitely the man of the match. And Pedri, De Jong, really just passing and moving, orchestrating that ball in the midfield. And in the second half, you saw it got to Newcastle when they were just literally just watching the ball move from side to side, forwards, and sometimes they didn't even know where to press at times. I think Eddie Howe made a crucial error in subbing off Elanga, because Elanga, in the very first half, created so many opportunities where he could just thread it across the box. And Anthony Gordon with an absolute missed opportunity to get Newcastle ahead. And I think Newcastle will be shooting themselves in the foot at those missed opportunities, and the amount of opportunities they had to bypass that offside trap from Barcelona and essentially cut them open several times. And it just begs a question, what would have happened if Newcastle did score those goals? And the second half, they came out, they looked high intensity again, but it was just a consistent theme across the match where Newcastle were really high intensity for 30 minutes trying to press Barcelona, and they did well, but then after that, they dropped off. And sometimes you watch the match and you just say, okay, cool, now it's Barcelona's time to shine. And Barcelona, they had shots, not too many essentially on target. From their perspective, they could have done better in the final third and have been a bit more clinical, but Rashford took his opportunities well. That second goal was absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. You've just got to take your hat off to him for that. And Newcastle, they did really well. They left the match proud. They got a goal back towards the end of the game. And I was just screaming and saying, just do long balls over the top. Get Voldemade, get Dan Burn, get Sven Botman up front and try and do something there. But they didn't. And I think they just left it a little bit too late, because Barcelona, when you looked at it on the overlap with especially Koundé on the right-hand side, they were really looking good. And I think Barcelona, they just had to wait and buy their time a little bit until the openings came. And the opening did come with that Rashford header. And you saw how Hansi Flick didn't really look worried throughout the match. He didn't, because you have two exceptional midfielders in Pedri and De Jong, just maintaining the ball and just allowing Newcastle to drain themselves fully of their energy throughout the match. And it gives, obviously, Newcastle just a depleted amount of enthusiasm to chase it anymore, because they were just chasing shadows, essentially. The ball possession that Barcelona kept throughout the match was in the mid-60s, and it just kills off any momentum that Newcastle will have, especially trying to press and trying to keep the ball themselves. They didn't at all. They didn't keep the ball. They were just reliant on the counter-attack to get the job done. And in St. James's Park, in that kind of atmosphere, you're obviously going to be more motivated by the 12th man, which is the fans. And the fans of Newcastle were shouting all game long. You can hear them in the actual TV set all game long in my headphones. And they done themselves proud. I got to say, Newcastle done themselves proud. They did put up a good performance against one of the best teams in the world. So it's just now onto Barcelona to see what they can do really against PSG. PSG are going to be the really, really big test. And then Stamford Bridge away is going to be an even bigger test for Barcelona. That's going to be the ultimate test, Stamford Bridge away, because I can see Chelsea doing extreme damage. Even though they just recently lost to Bayern Munich 3-1, they can do damage against Barcelona. And Barcelona need to watch out for that match especially. But PSG, hey, you better be looking at me, because I'm getting a PSG flag. Obviously, it's all banter at the end of the day. But you know what? I really want to see Barcelona essentially take a beating, because they don't look that good this season. Let's be honest. Barcelona do not look that good this season. Let's just take Valencia's match out of the equation and looking at across a string of games. Today, they weren't really at the races at all, essentially. They didn't really open up Newcastle. They were pretty much like second gear. But if Barcelona get to that fifth, sixth gear and they start really motoring, especially when Yamal returns into the team, then you're going to see a different level of Barcelona altogether. And it's up for Rashford now to step up out of the shadow of other players in the Barcelona team and now make a name for himself. Can he be consistent? Can he really deliver the goods across literally 5-6 games in a row? Or is he just going to be one game out of 3 or one game out of 6 where he performs well? Because that's not really screaming out a really good player. Maybe that's good in terms of kind of impacting certain moments or impacting games where you start that you need him, like Champions League games. Then that's fine, because that second goal, look, showed what Rashford can do, especially when he has his striking boots on. Yeah? So, look, Newcastle, they did well today. They did well. They pressed Barcelona really well. You saw Guimaraes, Joe Linton, and Tonali, especially in that very first half, making it really difficult and really getting stuck into their tackles and making it physical for Barcelona. Barcelona players, they were on the floor a lot of the times during the match, because Newcastle players were like, no, you're not getting past us. Dan Burn made a crazy tackle on Koundé that was absolutely nuts. Yeah, nearly send him out of the bloody stadium. And that's what I was expecting Newcastle to do across the whole match. But as soon as kind of like the 55th, 60th minute hit, they didn't really do that, because the players in Barcelona's team, and again, orchestrators in the team, when you don't really have Pedri or De Jong, you're not really going to keep the ball, essentially. But when Pedri and De Jong are on it, when they're just doing give and goes and they're just consistently making up passes just for the fun of it and just passing between themselves like they have no care in the world, then you know what? They're going to have and maintain the possession to keep the ball away from Newcastle long enough. And you saw towards the end of the match when Newcastle scored how obviously the whole team were actually passing the ball about like they didn't care. Like, they actually knew what they were doing. It's a very professional ending towards the game for Barcelona. And you know what? Real Madrid fans, Barcelona fans, we're always going to have the banter. We're always going to have that banter between us. And it's always going to be like that. We're going to end up supporting every single team that faces you, Barcelona. And you are going to do that exactly the same thing for every team that faces Real Madrid. You don't think that Barcelona fans turned into Marseille fanboys yesterday? I mean, on Tuesday, I think they did. I think they definitely did. So this match was ultimately a display of just a super determined Newcastle team in terms of like moments during a match where they had the opportunities to score but they didn't take them, and just Barcelona just waiting patiently for Newcastle to open up in certain occasions and then score their goals. And you know what, Hansi Flick, would he be walking away from that performance feeling happy? I don't think so, because at the end, it was just, squeaky bum time for Barcelona at the end of the game, even though they kept the ball away from Newcastle at times and trying to stifle Newcastle in terms of their attacks. Look, they've done a good job, Barcelona, especially to go away from home at St. James's Park and perform like that in a very hostile stadium, one of the most hostile in the UK. then you know you got to take your hats off to Barcelona as well. But they performed decently. They're still not 100%. I don't think Barcelona. I think they can be got out definitely, and hopefully it's up to Real Madrid in that very first El Clasico to show what an attacking team can do. Hopefully, I say hopefully loosely because the last performance against Marseille was absolutely shocking. And considering we had that performance at home and Barcelona had this performance away from home, then you know that Real Madrid definitely need to step up. I need to see Real Madrid step up big time, especially in certain passages of play during the match on how we can actually dismantle this Barcelona team. Can we do it effectively? Can we defend well? Because Newcastle defended well. I've got to say, they did defend well. They were getting stuck into tackles. They were moving the ball up quickly, especially in transition. And we have to just also take our hats off to Newcastle, take your hats off to Barcelona, because they both performed decently well. And yeah, Newcastle fans, they won't be too disappointed walking away from that. I think they got a couple of matches coming up that I think they can do a good job. But Barcelona, they definitely killed off the game with those 2 goals. And they just sat comfortably after, obviously, I would say a consolation goal from Newcastle. But let's see them move on to PSG. That's going to be the big test for Barcelona. Let's see what happens there. Guys, take care. Adios. Well done, Barcelona. Congratulations. And we move on to the next match. Take care. And we'll see you next time. A la Madrid. Y nada más. Adios. And big up Newcastle. Take care, guys.